IVM.
This is Audio Gyan, and I am your host Kedar Nimkar. Welcome to a deep dive into the minds of luminaries from the Indian creative world. Bade Ghulam Ali once said, if in every home one child was taught Hindustani classical music, this country would have never been partitioned. And in today's episode, we have two guests who have completely convinced with the power of music, not just for better future, but overall development of a child. We have Dakshayani Athalye and Mandar Karanjkar with us on Audio Gyan to discuss Baithak Foundation as a case study. Mandar is passionate believer of power of music. He's a communication consultant, conducts corporate trainings and more. He has 3 books in his name, currently student of Indian classical music and learned from late Pandit Vijay Sardeshmukh. Dakshayani has multiple years of experience in working with not-for-profits, a law graduate from Pune University and later pursued her higher education from TIS in Mumbai. She's a trained Kirtankar and we'll speak briefly about it in the last part of the conversation. So welcome Dakshayani and Mandar to Audio Gyan, and it's a real pleasure and actually an honor to have you on Audio Gyan.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure for us to be here as well.
Awesome.
Yeah, looking forward to the conversation.
Great. So those who are tuning in for the first time in Audio Gyan itself, I have 3 formats typically. One is a regular interview. One is a case study where interviews are typically a conversation based on a topic or something like that. Case study is where I generally deep dive into one particular problem statement or a project or a case study, as the name itself explains. And then there is biographies. So Mandar, definitely I want to do like a biography with you in the one of the following episodes as well. We'll come to that later. But this sort of episode is revolves around Baithak Foundation as a case study. And I've come up with few questions and it's like the stage is yours. I am sort of really not a pro in classical music. So pardon for like some naive questions and feel free to maneuver the conversation to help us understand what Baithak is about.
Sure. Yes, cool. Definitely. And there are no bad questions or naive questions. I think there can only be bad answers.
Yeah. Cool. So I wanted to start with like at a very meta level, like what is Baithak, right? Philosophically also, because I was listening to one of the interviews where Pandit Bhimsen Joshi was saying and we'll interchange between Marathi and English, so feel free to change. तो एका आसनात बसता येत नाही आणि आपल्या मराठीमध्ये पण बोलतात ना की बैठक पाहिजे माणसाशी. So I think he quoted something like within like 1 hour they changed some 22 asanas and not even complete the concert. So if you can start at a very sort of etymological thing to this word, like where did this word come from, or what according to you is Baithak?
Yeah. So see, like my approach is, I try to answer things from how I experience them and how I look at them. So if we look at this word Baithak, for me, it actually means commitment.
Wow.
Yeah. So it manifests in our mind and in our body in different forms. But essentially, Baithak is basically what is, in a very simple word, commitment to something. It could be commitment to music. It could be commitment to reading something. It could be commitment to improve myself. It's like cleaning oneself. And what do you need? Like, if you're committed to something, the one thing is that you have to leave other things aside. Yeah, that's what essentially choosing something means. When I say, I choose this, I'm leaving aside many things which I think maybe are not important. I don't enjoy, I don't like, whatever it is. So when we say Baithak, first it is your mental commitment. I want to go deeper into this, or I want to improve myself in this. And then, of course, for that, you definitely need a physical Baithak. Now, for a runner, that Baithak could be running. Mm-hmm. So Baithak is not always sitting at one place, but Baithak is your ability of not getting distracted and pursuing what you are committed for. So when we chose this word Baithak, we realized that it's a very wholesome word. It applies to everything that we are facing today. Like we don't eat good food because we don't have Baithak. We don't have patience to select the grocery rightly, to cook it properly, to serve it properly. So, if you go to the bottom of every so-called problem that we have, it's actually a lack of Baithak. And same applies to music. Whatever we are saying, some things are not good with this field, or whatever, things could be better. I think Baithak is one thing, which is sort of a, Kabir says, 5-25 pakad mangao ji ek hi dor lagaunga. So he says, if you have to catch many things, 5-25, you don't need those many ropes to catch them. You just need one rope, and that rope is your breath.
Wow.
So in the same way, this Baithak is that one rope, which can help solve many of our problems. And that's why we sort of chose this name.
Interesting. And then can it be loosely called as also Sankalp? Because Sankalp also has a similar, when you fix on a one thing and then leave out the others, right?
Yeah, but when you say Sankalpa, you have some idea of a defined path that you are going to follow, and you also have idea about what is your outcome going to be, likely outcome. When I say Baithak, I am not concluding, in this direction I want to go, or, all of that. So Baithak just means I can cut my distractions.
Also, I feel that the word Baithak signifies the process also. It's not a state in that sense, actually. It's something that you do every day. So I find it very interesting that it is a process. Word speaks about a process, or rather to be in process is important than the outcome. So.
Beautiful. Cool. So yeah, Dakshayani, to you, like, what is this foundation about and how did it come to be? Like, if you can just set the premise of what's sort of the corporate term, like there is this mission kind of a thing. Is there something like that? It has I believe it's a tagline, building artistic foundation. So can you throw some more light to it?
Yes. I mean, we are still discovering this, by the way. The organization is constantly growing, I would say. I don't think we've stopped growing in that sense, conceptually as well. But I'll talk a bit about how we started. So we started just with a simple idea that we had music in our lives, both Mandar and I, in different forms. And we just felt that we needed to take this music to the students that we were working with. I was at that time working at a school. So we thought we need to take this to children. And then we also had a lot of assumptions or misconceptions in some sense, about the music that we liked, because we've always been told that classical music is not for masses. It cannot be appreciated by everyone. You need to have a certain background and all of those things. So it was a mix of all these things, a mix of wanting to do something for children, realizing that, children need music and they don't have access to good quality music or music education. Then realizing that, Indian classical music is also not accessible. There's something that needs to be done there. So we were just basically seeing a lot of these challenges and just very intuitively felt inclined towards doing something about it. And so we started off with actually just going and working with children. So it didn't start off as an organization in a sense. It started more as a personal endeavor. So we just started going to an after-school Teach for India center after our jobs. So we had our day jobs. We started going to the center on weekends. And we basically just started off with introducing music to children. And that we did by, singing film songs, singing notations, singing Saregamapa, trying to make our combinations, in groups, just trying to make it as interesting as possible for children. But at the same time, we were also testing some of our assumptions about music. So we designed the program in a way where we both would personally do these classes and interactions with students just to understand how do they receive this music, because it's definitely different from popular music. And so does that difference itself become a barrier in reaching children? So we started off with that. And very interestingly, we realized that there's nothing like that actually. These all assumptions are in the minds of adults, and children actually don't have them at all. They don't have that kind of distinction. The distinction is only in the sound. And if they like the sound, they will listen to it. And they did like Indian classical music. So it was interesting for us. It was a surprise that these assumptions were in our mind. And that's how we started. So after a year of doing this, then the next year we registered the foundation. We felt that, no, this needs to become more structured. We need to apply our minds to it and energy to it. And so we started off. And after, of course, a couple of mistakes, now we are in such a place where we have certain programs. So we start off with something called as Anubhav. which is basically giving students the exposure of Indian classical music. And music includes vocal, instrumental, and dance. So we do all kinds of
nice.
forms.
Okay.
Yeah, we go with that definition of Sangeet. Sangeet is Gayan, Vadan, Nritya. So we go with that. And there are a couple of these concerts that happen. So we write from Carnatic music, Drupad, Satar, Sarod, Santur, to Kathak, Odissi. So we do a mix of concerts basically in the first year, especially of our intervention, the first year of our school program. And that's called Anubhav. So it's just experience. We want students to start with experiencing the sound and experiencing the visual, experiencing the craft. So we start with experience. Then the second year in most of the schools where we work is Parichay. And Parichay is basically workshops. So just getting to know some of these things from close quarters. So let's say if we did a Kathak concert in the first year, we like to follow it up with say a Kathak workshop the next year. Depending on what, there are of course at all levels, we value student choices. So, we put up posters, students sign up. For workshops also, we take their preferences, which workshops they would like to do and all of that. But basically the next year is to get to know that art form, a little closely. So we do a vocal workshop, let's say, or an instrument workshop and all. So that's the second year. And the third year is basically what we call Talim. And Project Talim is basically like a music clubs, it's teaching learning that happens. So it's like an after school music class that happens. Again, it's all choice based and all of that. And we keep a smaller number of children in a group. And alongside Anubhav and Parichay can continue. So that's the progression that we follow. And we've completed 5 years. So some of our schools have reached the Talim phase in that sense. And now we look forward to doing more, especially now that the pandemic is hopefully, thankfully, receding. So, but that's how the programs are. Yeah.
No, I have two questions there actually. So one is, you said it's when you introduce, like I was listening to this. In fact, I've interviewed Dhanashree Pandit Rai also, and in her TEDx talk, she made it sort of connect with, say, like ulala la ulelo, whatever, like contemporary thing to like a boop rag, right? So you drive those sort of, how do you make it relatable to children? Because it's tough, right? Because it's purely notes. If you tell, they may not able to comprehend or the interest might not be there. So any nuances there? So that's one question. And there is one more follow-up. So yeah.
So one is that we've worked with this premise actually. And that's why I say this definitely with some kind of confidence that it's not difficult. It's not difficult for children to get a hang of it. It's they apply their minds very well. It is actually in the minds of the performer actually sometimes, the question of whether they are able to reach the child in front of them. But students are actually very good at picking. If they're interested, if they like the sound, if they're there present, they very quickly pick up stuff.
So you're saying the nuances of just like whatever, like, because in at least in classical music, like sometimes like a komal makes a completely different rag. So are they able to catch that nuances, or you don't get that detail also?
We don't get into that kind of depth because that will anyways need years of intervention. So we are able to understand these differences in say rags or tals or, and how it all comes together and the improvisation part of it because we've listened for many years. Now that process in itself is not happening for many of these students. So that's another aspect where if they listen for many years, it will happen to them also. Now, specifically from the workshops or the concerts point of view, that we do, what children really appreciate is that how the music sounds. Then the other is how the artists communicate with each other. They're able to notice those nuances for sure. As to they're able to understand that there's some vocal improvisation happening and at the same time there's something that the tabla player is doing differently that he's not done before. So they catch those kinds of changes.
Wow.
For sure. And in the workshop, we've thankfully have had such wonderful artists working with the foundation that they've always communicated with relatable examples, such as, say for example, painting. So now all children do painting in that sense, they have access to colors and crayons and all of that. So then there are two shades of red, say, in your palette. Now they're both red, but they're not the same. So then how do two rays sound different? And then you get them to sing, So you give an example and then you ask them to sing or do something along with you. So we've worked with such wonderful artists who give these kinds of examples, that make them relatable.
Very, very interesting. The red example was quite interesting.
Just to add a bit to this, see, there are 2-3 factors in play here, So one is we work with a large number of young musicians. Some of them are already teaching in some schools. Some of them already have young students who come and learn from them. So actually it's a pool of knowledge that we also acquire, through our association with these young musicians. So they come with, fantastic examples, ideas like Dakshayani talked about, 2 shades of red, and then, relating them with Komal Swar and Shuddha Swar, or, they will mimic some sounds which we commonly observe, or they would make some rhythms through their instruments or through singing or through their body. So one is that part. Secondly, like if we talk to like let us say there is a 5 years old kid who is undernourished. So what would we do? So one thing is we would give that child good food. Yeah, we won't explain that child about ki, see, this has quinoa and this has moringa and this, that. What our responsibility is in a way to make it palatable. And then the child asks the question, what is this made up of? What ingredients have we used? And then we only supply that much of knowledge. So in schools, we follow the second approach. We ensure that best of the music reaches the kids in the best possible environment. We have intimate setting, we have small venues, interaction is possible. And then once kids are hooked to the music, they automatically will start asking these questions. What was that? It sounded a little bit different. What happened at that point? And then the artists would answer those questions.
Interesting. And Mandar, you also have like these sub-initiatives, or I don't know, how do you want to term it? But there is like Baithak Museum, there's Bandish Bank project, there are curated concerts. You want to elaborate on that? Like what is this? Because Dakshayani spoke about Anubhav, Parichay and Talim. Can you elaborate on the other sub sort of initiatives? Yeah.
So, after we started Baithak, initially we were a little bit clueless. Like we didn't know we were clueless, but the way we were acting, we were acting like clueless. We would be doing things randomly, haphazard, because there is so much that needs to be done. But soon we met a mentor and a guide who gave us a very beautiful example. He said that, look, if a river is flowing, everything is good. But if you obstruct that river, if you build dams on the river here and there, what you get is ponds. Those ponds will be dead, they will start rotting and there will be all the garbage into that because it's a dead system. So what he said is, don't work on beautifying the ponds, but rather just remove the blockages. As soon as you remove the blockages, the river will again start flowing and that whole mechanism of cleansing itself, it will start automatically. So our approach, of looking at this field is a very broad approach. So we had decided that, like Baithak will do what maybe no one wants to do or no one is doing. Yeah. So for example, we never do concerts in auditoriums. So we get many times this request, that let us partner and let us do this music festival because so many people are doing it. So as you said, the sub initiatives that we have, like we have a wonderful initiative which we call Tune In. So right at the beginning of the interview, you said that some questions could be naive and please understand and all of that. So there is a fear, in our mind about music, about talking, about music with someone else. And it's very common. We know many friends, many elderly people, they are afraid to ask questions. So we thought something needs to be done here, we have to remove this fear, this block. So Tune In were very, very intimate appreciation sessions where we answer the questions. People are welcome to ask questions. So this is one initiative. Or archiving is a very problematic thing, in field of Indian classical music, because there are people who are hoarding recordings and, cassettes and spools of private concerts. So we have seen, many of these recording catching fungus and, getting permanently damaged. But the people who had them, they were not willing to share. So this was one part, where we again started working. We said, if you have anything that needs digitization, pass it on to us. We will digitize. We will give you a copy. And only if you allow, we will put it up on our website so that everyone can access it without paying any money. So this is about museum. So we now have fantastic collection, coming through different people, and we have an array of spool players and cassettes, and we digitize that material.
And we not only digitize, we also share it online as much as possible. So if you see on our website, we have curated exhibitions. That's just a way of sharing that archive, with people.
Mm-hmm.
And mentally, all these initiatives, as you said, if they're sub-initiatives of how, I think mentally for us, how we've categorized them is the aspect of accessibility. One is with children, all our initiatives that are focused on children. And then the others are divided into accessibility and knowledge. So initiatives which focus on building knowledge in this field or around this field, and initiatives that are making this music accessible. Mm-hmm. So those are the broad categories for us, knowledge and accessibility. And we put all our initiatives under those.
Beautiful. Let's take a short break here. We'll be right back. Okay, welcome back to the show. In fact, it's so wonderful because when you started Baithak definition, it also is is a process, and even in philosophy, you have this concept called as you don't. So there are two ways to reach the higher state of consciousness. Either you discover, keep discovering, or then you decide. I think that the mentor, I think, took the discovery path. Let's see how it unfolds as time goes along, right? Yeah. So how has been the response so far? 23 schools, I think 35,000, if I'm not wrong. How many children? There was a stats on your website. I forgot the number, but how's the response been? Like, what are your learnings so far, and how is this? Like, Dakshayani, you spoke about it, but if you want to just elaborate on that, how are schools responding to this, or are there any other private institutions which are sort of collaborating on this?
So one is that I think as an organization grows, it surely, if you are on the right path or if you consistently just keep doing your work, I think that itself brings in credibility and support, in some way or the other. So with Baithak, we have seen that progression also, that now there are many more people who are sort of interested and who reach out and who want to collaborate, and so we are definitely in that space right now. But if you see, that's not exactly how it started. These programs were such programs which probably nobody felt that they needed. But once we did those, then there was a demand for it in a way. So we started from there. So we've done many teacher training programs. We've reached out to a lot of school leaders, convincing, in some way for them to take up this program. But it's really very heartwarming to see how they've realized and experienced the value of it very immediately, actually. So it's almost, we've had to do maybe one or two concerts or the Anubhav sessions, in these schools. And the response from the school, has just, that has driven all the other programs, actually, So it's only those first discussions become a little difficult because, music is still considered a luxury. It's still considered something for the privileged, So when you're tied so much on, your academics, your budgets and all of that, finding budget for music, it becomes really tough. So we have to fight hard in that sense. But it's only at the beginning, I would say. After that, once we do these programs, these sessions, they're very beautifully received. One of the learnings for us has been to let people experience, then to convince them through knowledge. So that's a big learning experience for them. So what we do is that even if a school is not interested in, say, doing, our sessions, we say, we'll come and do a concert just once. Just let us come once, and then that's the entry, So instead of talking and convincing about how music helps in cognitive development, how does it help you in your motor skill development or overall development, how will it make you a better person, instead of going on the path of knowledge and convincing people through argument, we felt that convincing people through an experience is much easier. So that's definitely one big learning for us right there.
And it seems very powerful because, if the right note touches the chord, I think it's like divine. Yes.
That has worked really well for us. The other thing I would say is that we have, over a period, made smaller changes in our programs. They're not big changes, but just how the interaction should go, how long should it be, how short should it be, those kinds of smaller changes. What should be the frequency of sessions? What should we start off with? So, should we start off with a vocal concert in a school, or should we start with an instrumental concert? Now, because, as I just said, that first impression, that first concert, that first experience is very important. So we've slowly made some of these decisions in designing our events, our programs, So it's been a slow learning process. So, but now we more or less know what works, So, yeah, but those are definitely two big things for us. Mandar can maybe add if I've missed something.
Yeah. See, like, people really want to support good work. This is what we realized. So to give you an example, when we started this weekend activity, Dakshayani was working in a company called Alicon Castalloy. And the owner of the company, Mrs. Rai, so she would, talk to us. She liked music, so we would perform for her friends. And then one day she said, okay, I will support you. Why don't you do this full time?
Wow.
So, at multiple points, we met such people who supported us in some way. Like we have a friend, his name is Kranti. He's a very celebrated filmmaker, Kranti Kanade. It's a very nice house in Pune. And like we use his house more than he does. We do music classes at his house. We do concerts at his house. We do workshops. So many things we do. So I think what we are grateful for is that there is so much of support, like often we wonder, like, are we doing justice to, all this support which is coming to us? And it's same from every side, it's from school side also. Schools are also, as Dakshayani said, very welcoming. Artists want to participate in this initiative. People want to donate equipment. There are people who would say, okay, I will give you old spool player, take it, use it. So I would say we are very fortunate, that we got noticed by all these people.
And I'm just curious to know, because when you are starting off, even with a vocal sort of a performance or an instrumental, it typically, like, at least the type of music I have heard, it starts with like a Vilambit Khayal or some, like, how do you generate that interest in a person who has never heard it? Because for it, like, I remember I at least started listening to it with Ghulam Ali, who's slightly lightweight, like I mean, compared to say Amir Khan. Like if I'm directly introduced to Amir Khan, I won't be able to like ever be interested, right? So how do you, like, is there any nuance there at a, like, any particular song, or I don't know, I'm just trying to imagine what it could be.
So see, there are, again, when we talk about this, we generally have some assumptions, So for example, this Garudi. So what we think is, that snake is dancing to the tune. But actually snakes don't have ears. They look at that red thing which is hanging below his instrument and they follow that instrument. So in same way, musicians also feel, that audience is moving as per something, but actually the audience is appreciating something totally different. So there is a clear lag, between what, as artists, we think what people are enjoying, but what people actually enjoy.
So to add to that, I very vividly remember this example. So we were at a school and it was a Santur concert. And one of the questions that we usually ask is, what did you like the most, in the concert? What will you take away with you, and what you will remember the most? So children gave their answers, and one of the students said that I liked that first part, of whatever Bhaiya was playing. I liked that first part. So then we were like, okay, so when the tabla came in and it was slow tempo, so did you like that part? And this guy goes, no, 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 not that. Not even when the tabla came. When there was no tabla, when only that instrument was playing, I liked that part. So he was basically referring to Alap Jhod Jhala. He was not referring to even the gut or anything, And it has stayed with me because that's what we think that children will like the faster parts more or the madhyalay more, or maybe when the percussion is there, they might enjoy that. But that's not necessarily the case. Somebody may appreciate something completely different. And in fact, the other feedback that we've received from many teachers is that there are many students who are not able to, just sit in one place, especially during the academic classes. They are the ones who are extremely observed in all these music sessions.
Wow.
So it's really interesting to see, we look from the point of view of an adult.
Yeah.
And
often like we also get hooked to slow things more than fast things. Like for example, a carpenter who is working, very minutely removing small chips of wood, and we can watch it for hours. So actually what we are watching is not the speed, but the involvement of that person with his or her craft or art. So in case of instrumental music or vocal music or dance form, when you are at a very close distance, that is what we are focusing on. This won't happen if we are in an auditorium. Because I cannot grasp all these nuances sitting like 50 feet away from the performer. So that's why we ensure intimate setting. And then we have seen, like for example, when you do Jod on Santur, Alap or Jod on Santur, that mallet is actually jumping on the strings many times a second. And students can actually see that happening. So I think students get hooked to these things, rather than how fast is this going? Is the musician going very high or very low? Of course, they like these things also. But what they really appreciate is that oneness, between the artist and the art.
Yeah, now I can relate to it because I have often quoted this in multiple interviews. I was trying to learn flute. I don't know anything about flute now. It just Saregama, that's it. But I tried to learn for 1 year and it was a very intimate Guru Shishya Parampara style. The guru's name is Giridhar Doderi and he's from Venkatesh Godkhindi Gharana. So it is a very small garage with like probably 8 feet by 10 feet. And there are like some 7-8 different flutes. And sir picks up one and he goes for like 45 minutes with say just Yaman. And it feels divine because you are almost like 2 feet away from him. And just that bamboo can create so much without even like tabla there. Like there is a talmala, that's it. So yeah, I get what you're saying. So apart from intimacy, like have you engineered or have you come up with any other sort of changes? Because again, वो cliche है ना कि like जो अभी इतने साल से चल रहा है, like 1,000 years it has survived, it will survive. It's classical art form, it will always survive. So do you think there needs to be little re-engineering required, or this intimacy is enough for pass it on and generate that curiosity?
So see, first thing, that this thing, that this music is non-tampered or as it is for, hundreds of years and all of that. It's not like that. Yeah, like if you listen to music even 50 years before, it was very different. It was very different in terms of the pitch that our voices had. Even the structures of ragas are changing a little bit, what instruments were used. So one thing that we have to understand is that music is always changing. Yeah, so tradition doesn't mean getting stuck at one point, but tradition means basically you stick to some values and you reinvent those values in your context and in your time. So that is one part of the answer, that there is a lot of variation and there is a lot of things changing, like every musician that comes in, it has no connection with like 3 or 4 generations before how the musicians in the same school played. It's very different. That is one part. Second part is like what else we do to make it attractive to students or to make it palatable, to individuals. So one thing is that we actually tell artists that we don't want any gimmicks. Like tihai is long, tihai is one after the other, or a lot of jugalbandi between the two. We said, don't do any of that. As you practice for yourself, just play that. That is one thing that we do. Second thing is we take a lot of care on creating an atmosphere of inclusion at our concerts. So whenever fear comes in, the learning totally stops. So we ensure that there is no fear. Yeah, so students they have been told that you can ask questions, but of course there are rules also. So we also tell them rules that you cannot disturb in between. We also say that if you find it boring, get up quietly and leave. Like no one will say anything to you. Why did you leave and all of that? So students who are in the room, they are aware of what they have signed up for and what is their responsibility and also what is their freedom. And I think if the music is good, that is enough to ensure that kids like it.
Correct.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So we've always seen, and this is our only brief to the artists whenever, they come and do these concerts and workshops, is that do not compromise. Do not ever think in your mind that these children don't have the background in music. They're listening to this for the first time. Oh, I need to make it easy or nothing. You do it the way you will do it for your best audience, basically. And they are the best audience. And we've seen that. We've seen musicians, we have had Drupad musician coming to construction site doing a 45-minute alap, and students have listened to it and very engagingly. And the musician has not compromised at all. Yeah. And yes, there will be one or two who will leave, and that's their freedom. And that's exactly what we need to normalize in a way, It's okay, it's not everyone's cup of tea. I don't like watching football. I don't have to stay on the field all the time. I watched a game for 10 minutes. It's okay. So we keep that kind of openness towards, classical art forms also. I think that's very important. In this business of giving respect, what happens is that we lose the spontaneity and the real connection with it, We're so constantly scared of things. Our only brief is that. And also the other thing that we tell artists is that you have to answer everything. You cannot say that, no, I can't answer this. No, this is long answer. No, you need many, many years. That can't be your answer. You have to give a proper answer. You will do for 15 years, then you will know. These cannot be the answers. You have to explain why. 15 years, then why 15 years you have to explain. So just bring that honesty there in your performance and then it'll happen. So that's our only brief. And we've seen that more or less that has worked.
I think I should sort of attend to learn few things, because in design, at least right now, I'm in that stage where if anybody asks me how to do anything, I think just do whatever you want, just do it for 12 years. And if anybody asks why 12 years, actually, I don't have an answer. Maybe I'll just attend some of your sessions and learn how to answer that. It's just a function of consistency, according to me.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
No, and that's exactly the answer right there. Yeah. When you say it in that way, you reach the other person. When you say that it is about consistency, you reach the other person. Then other person knows that it is achievable. Yeah. I just have to go with that consistency. Now, I may need 5 years, somebody may need 10 years. That's okay. Yeah. But when you start with this thing of, no, you will need 20 years, you will need 15 years. Mm-hmm. But what are you asking in those 20 years? That needs to be clear. And that's exactly that consistency, that commitment, or, that interest, that joy in learning. That also has to be there, Then it will sustain. Then one will stay with it very automatically.
In fact, there are so many threads like right now going through my head. Yeah. So Mandar, I wanted to ask you about this thing that yes, Baithak is a progression. It's a way of sort of going through that flow, right? And if you say Anubhav and Parichay, these two things, yes, they introduce you. But when it comes to Talim, sadhana or sort of is a very integral part of it. So do you see any drops there, or are you comfortable with the drop of number of students, or how do you sort of make peace with it? What's happening at that front where you have generated an interest? I'll take a very sad example, but in the Indian context, what happens is a lot of UI UX, especially the field in which I am, There are a lot of people who are learning via mentoring, and then they are flying to Berlin and different parts of the world because there's great exposure and like good UI outside there. So it sometimes hurts कि यार यहाँ पे इतना like mentoring हुआ है, and India needs good design. So why are you flying outside? Where like I'm just drawing that parallel here. So what happens in Talim, and how do you sort of start making people sensitive that if you want to get into this, not in a purest sense, but it's a long-term commitment? How do those dynamics work?
Yeah. So see, the fundamental thing, about which we are very clear is that we are not here to create musicians. So that's not our objective. That is a byproduct. Yeah. And we have a mechanism to support that byproduct, wherever we see a possibility. But what we essentially want to do is actually give experience of music to students. That is the thing, we want to use and introduce music as a practicing art form. So we make this distinction, that a performing art form versus a practicing art form. Like Hatha Yoga, for example. It's a practicing art form. I do it for myself. And I don't perform it on a stage. In same way, music is also a practicing art form. It became performing, at different points in its journey because of different reasons. But what we focus on is basically introducing music as a powerful tool to every student. If out of 100 students, 5 students say that we want to learn this, we are very happy to provide that infrastructure to them. Okay, we will give you a good tutor, we will support you for your learning journey. If you are taking more interest, we will help you make it your career also. We can connect you to a nice Gurukul, we can give you concert opportunities, and all of that can be worked out. But as I said, that is actually purely a byproduct. So, Pula Deshpandeंचं एक भाषण आहे देवधर मास्तरांवर. I think it's on his 75th birthday. I don't know exact occasion.
Yeah.
And there he says, की देवधर मास्तरांचा हेतू काही कुमार गंधर्व निर्माण करणं नव्हता. पण जर कुमार गंधर्व बनला तर निदान लोकांना कळायला तरी हवं की अरे हा कुमार गंधर्व आहे. हा त्यांचा हेतू होता. So so basically when you have a diamond, you should have at least 1,000 people who know what diamond is. Otherwise that diamond has no value. So in same way, we are not here in the field of music to create diamonds. If the diamonds happen through this journey, we are very happy for that. But our outcome is totally different, as we see that.
The other is actually also just practically, we are still in that sense a young organization for us to see that kind of impact of Talim particularly, or to face very specific challenges for that program. I think it's now the next 2-3 years we will be in that place where we may have some of these challenges. If somebody wants to take it full time, how do you convince their parents? There can be 100 other things also. What should they study? Should they do a graduation at all? These are all big choices for all students. So we're still not in that place just, with the timeline that we are on. So, yeah, but I think as Mandar just rightly said but we are not focused on creating performance. We are performers. We are more focused on creating listeners and more focused on providing music as a strong companion in the lives of these children, So it's something like a tool that they can anytime fall back on. It's a constant companion. So we wish that they seek that companionship in music practice, which I feel is happening for sure for some students. Yeah.
I think, did you consciously not choose the word kansen because it is not purely listeners also, and it is neither an performing artist also. It's right in the middle, I think. Is that a correct understanding?
So, I mean, we are not using the word kansen or audience also in that sense, it's sort of the same, connoisseurs or anything like that. We're not using those terms is because I think when you're an audience, the name itself suggests, there is a distance from the performance. So, you were different and you also sort of are in a place where you judge the merit and impact and that part of, what's happening in front of you. And the other thing is some sense, it's still intellectual. It's not very close to that experience, when you do the art, that's the closest that you can get, to that art form basically. And it's very practically also, it changes a lot of things in you. Like your breathing can change, like your right left brain connections can change, quite drastically if you're practicing music. So these are, of course, all the other benefits of practicing music in that sense. And it also takes you a step closer to that art form. It's not passive anymore. You're very actively involved in that action, and which is very important. And when you take the performance side out of it, you're actually removing the competition, you're removing in some sense, you're removing some of these parts.
Need for a good voice.
Yeah, some of these limitations or these ideas that are associated with art, you're removing those actually. Because then you don't want to be a performer, that's not your objective at all. So you're focusing on the joy, focusing again on the process more than your product. So that is why we call it, practicing art form. So we want to create practitioners of this music, which may not necessarily be performers, but they'll practice.
Yeah. And one more thing before we conclude the last part of the session is that when I was trying to learn the flute, it's tough, right? You have to just keep doing at it. Like I was just like basic saregama padanisa, but like sir told me to practice in like double, triple speed, and there is no shortcut there. So how do you ensure that the kids, especially the new generation who have so low attention span and everything happens at a click of a button, in that setting, repetition, because you can master only through repetition here as per my understanding. So if you have any other format to learn this, I doubt that. But how do you sort of implement it? Like it just repetition, right?
It is pretty much repetition. There are, and students most of the times, don't get the time to practice also at home. Most of our students actually don't even have space to practice. Space is a luxury for most of us actually, It's very challenging for a lot of students whom we work with to be able to find even a corner or a spot where they can practice, And if they're doing dance, then it's even more difficult. Just no space at all to practice. So there are those challenges, but...
No, but in here, what I was trying to point out is, chalo, even if there is space, even there is some time, the sheer act of it is monotonous. It is not monotonous. It is monotonous if you don't understand it. It's like just same thing over and over again. So like, how do you build that confidence? Because those like maybe like few months of practicing, you haven't moved much, and that's typically with any classical form. So like, how do you build that sort of curiosity? Or
so one thing is what I have seen all these teachers do in classroom is basically they always balance out the repetition with a lot of, what do you say, new content in that sense, So there is always something new that's done in every class. So one is, let's say for example, in Kathak, you are learning a tatkar. You're basically learning your footwork, If you have 4 beats and you're learning how to do, or 8 beats and you're learning how to do that. Now that is going to take time, and that might even take like 2 months, let's say, just to get the basic footwork right. Now what this teacher will do is that they will do a part of the class that is theory. So, say how many dance forms are there in India? Why are they called classical? Why are some not called classical, Then there are some shloks or some piece of music basically that, typically is used in a particular school. So they will teach those. You get students to recite those. Then you get back to the practice of your tatkar. Then you go back and, you make your notes maybe. You write down what sort of you did today or how you felt today. You come back to your tatkar. So there is a mix of this, that is in that sense done in any class. There is a bit of theory and then there's a bit of practice that is done. And in practice, again, what I've noticed most of teachers do is that you pay individual attention and you give everyone chance, to showcase something in front of the class, and you require others to observe that. That in itself, centers the energy of the entire group, around a particular task. So in this, everybody is constantly observing each other and sharing feedback with each other and noticing what is going wrong, and then realizing that, I'm also doing the same mistake probably. So, it's really dependent on the teacher, I would say, that how they bring together the energy of the class. But I've seen most of our teachers do that very beautifully. Then they keep students on foot, So that happens. And of course, there are challenges. There will be some students who will get tired and they don't want to do it anymore, but you have to keep pushing them sort of, And the other thing is, actually, I've never seen these teachers, say like dance teachers or even those teaching vocals, they're not sitting there. They're also equally participating. So for the entire 1.5 hour, that teacher is also doing the footwork with them. So when they see that teacher say she's asking us to do it for 10 minutes, but she's herself been doing it for, past 20 minutes, that's inspiring in itself, that you see somebody with that stamina and you want to achieve that. So that happens. And so teachers find ways.
Yeah. Like for example, in Bharatnatyam, there is a particular way of jumping where you jump up and you again come on the ground, but in a such way that there is no sound of your feet. It's a technique. They will jump and they will come down without making any sound. Now kids find this very fascinating, and actually they can spend half an hour to 45 minutes just practicing that because they really want to do it. They really want to learn how to do it. Yeah, so every art form has some magic practices, See, art has been like gathering so many people around it because it has some magic to it. So I think what we have to do is we have to just give a glimpse of that magic to the kids. And then they run behind us, no, I want to learn this, teach this to me.
Yeah.
Very nice, very nice. Cool. I think we can conclude with the last few set of questions, which is sort of, I know, like you said, you are exploring and we also spoke about it's a discovery, it's a process, but have you given some thought about like what is Baithak's future, like what shape and form it will have in the metaverse? Or I don't know, metaverse is still far away because we are in like some other world today, especially for India as well. But any thoughts 20, 30 years out? Like, how do you see Baithak sort of growing, Mandar?
Yeah. So, see, I believe in the moment, So to be very honest, I can just talk about what is happening at this moment, But with Baithak, like one thing that both of us feel, that it will be a movement of people, a movement of artists, a movement of teachers, a movement of parents, a movement of students. So what we are sort of trying to create is a model where, we take care of everything. Okay, funding part is sorted, school part is sorted, artists sorted, logistics sorted. So see, this is the model. You want to replicate it at your place? Tell us what is missing, and we will just help you find that part and you are on your own. So we want it to grow in that way, that like musicians in probably every town will say, okay, I want to have a chapter of Baithak in my community. Yeah, so that is what. But as I said, we can't say what will happen. It might be much bigger than this also. We don't know.
Correct. Yeah, in fact, I want to go back to the earlier question. When you said magic, I remembered Pula Deshpande in one of the speeches, he was saying ki आजकाल 20 राग घोकायला लावतात. They might know the history, but they don't know the mystery behind like one rag also. So yeah, the magic part I could sort of connect. Yeah. And Dakshayani, like I wanted to ask you about the Kirtankar part, which I started off with. Can you elaborate a little bit on it? Like, are there listeners today? What's the scene like? If it interests, maybe we can do like a separate audio GAN session on it because it's a very, very beautiful art form. So, but yeah, just a quick glimpse. And how does it help Baithak in any way? Do you see parallels? Do you see inspiration driving from here to there? Or yeah.
So, it's a big practicing community. Again, there are many who do kirtans, who perform, who go places, with this art form. So it's very much alive in that sense. However, it's alive in a, how can I say that? It's very rigid in some sense in its format, in its content, and in its delivery, in just the way the form works, sort of. So in that sense, it's very organized. So my endeavor in that sense with this art form has been to sort of broaden that horizon, to say, let's say, basically talk about subjects that are not spoken through that art form. So like, we've done kirtans on Ramakrishna Paramahansa, on Hari Prasad Chaurasia. So is it possible sort of, to open that space basically? So I try to do that. One is that. The other is I don't adhere to many, many tenets of the form in that sense. I do follow a broader structure, as in how it's presented, की पूर्वरंग असतो, उत्तरंग असतो, मग आपण नमन करतो सुरुवातीला, किंवा अशा सगळ्या गोष्टी मी करते. But what I make sure is that I also follow a style and I speak the way that I really want to communicate, and not something that I don't like or I don't possess, which is in fact how otherwise one would see popularly kirtans happening. There's a bit of drama to it, which I'm not very comfortable with. So then I avoid doing that. So that's where I come from. The connection I have seen with, say, classical music, or how it adds to, what we are doing, it's really very strong actually, because classical music is very integral part of kirtan. So all that we sing, abhang, ovi, arya, sakhi, je kai ami gato, all that is set in Indian classical. In the sense, there's always some rag that the bhajan is based on. There's always some kind of melodic line that you use, say, for the gajar part, or so there's this deep connection with classical music. So, and I feel that kirtan is actually, and has been actually, the more accessible form for masses, because it sort of happens in temples, it happens in the, गावाच्या जत्रेमध्ये होतं. So its location is such that it's more accessible.
Yeah, and the subject and the content also is slightly relatable. Like,
Correct. So what happens is that becomes an entry point for many people. In fact, a lot of classical musicians, until very recently, actually have been from families who've had some connection with Kirtankars, किंवा काहीतरी हरिकथा आजोबा करायचे, आई करायची. And then, slowly the next generation has gone towards Indian classical music. So there is a deep connection. There's a connection like that with Natya Sangeet also, actually. Because that's the entry point, and that's the one that's accessible to the masses more than classical, And that adds to the work that we do also in some sense, because it just helps you understand what is that reaches people, because some of these art forms have employed tunes, notes, rhythmic cycles, which are, as you had, some of your first questions were, is that how do you make it palatable? So there are some of these structures indeed which are more relatable, and you will find the use of these in kirtan or in bhajan or in such kinds of forms, So that's a good feedback system actually for you to know that what works, with masses in that sense. So yeah, it does help. But I am a very different performer from the, I think the traditional way it's done, I still follow the format, but a lot of things, I've changed a lot of things. I don't do the usual stuff. So yeah.
Got it. Cool. What sort of reach right now? You guys are sort of in Pune and other parts of the country, or it just, have you explored other schools in other geographies, or what's the state like?
So right now we are in Pune primarily. That is our home ground. We did a pilot in Delhi. So we're exploring whether Delhi is possible. The pilot was successful. We'll see how that goes. We are also in Solapur. We've completed our pilot project in Solapur, and we are very much looking forward to the next year in Solapur. So Solapur for sure. The other exciting thing for Baithak is that we are soon hopefully coming up with a rural center closer to Dapoli. And once that happens, we hope that we will be able to reach some rural schools, because till now we've always worked in urban, semi-urban locations. So this will be a new experience, but I'm guessing that will take some time for the center to come up and it to grow. But yes, we'll definitely look forward to growing in some rural locations. Yeah.
Cool. Any concluding thoughts, Mandar, Dakshayani, anyone? Just for the listeners, want to?
Yeah. So see, like when we look at this whole initiative, our initial goal, like when we sat, okay, we have to do something, let's start something and all of that. Our objective was, that we should at least do 3 concerts every year, and we should at least work with 2 schools. But what we realized is that we have already outgrown that initial dream by many times in just 3-4 years, So what we learned from that is, that we should never operate out of insecurity. Because, most of the times we have these targets, and then targets make you run. You have to do many things just because you have targets. So that is one thing that we have, very clearly defined, that we won't do something just because we have to do those things, to maybe please someone or to meet some criteria or to get some grant. And that's why the answer to your question, where do you see it 10 years, 20 years later, is because we really don't know, because there is no set path here. Like as Krishnamurti said, that it's a pathless land. So I think that's it, and whenever we look at any good initiative, this seed is present there, that it started with authenticity of what you want to do and not in terms of what scale you want to reach, how many people you want to impact and all of that. These things happen automatically if you stay true with your seed, and that's what we are trying to do.
Beautiful. I think I'm going to borrow a lot of words if I have to give in to you about AudioGyan. It's the same, but you have sort of articulated beautifully. Cool. I think this is a good note to end. Thanks a lot for giving your time. All the best to Baithak Foundation, and would like to have you guys again on AudioGyan, maybe on a different topic. There are a lot of things I've noted down which can stream into much longer conversations. But yeah, thanks once again.
Definitely, Kedar. And thanks to you actually for giving us this opportunity, because this also helps us articulate, as you just rightly said, it helps us think about what we've been doing and helps us articulate them better. So I hope it all made sense and it will hopefully make sense to the listeners too. So, but we are very deeply thankful. Thank you.
All the best.
Yeah, all the best to you.
Thank you. Bye. And that's it from today's Gyan session. For show notes and more Gyan, visit audiogyan.com. If you like this podcast, please don't forget to check our other interesting podcast on IVM Network. You can listen to us on IVM Podcast app, ivmpodcast.com, or any of your favorite podcasting apps. To stay tuned, follow us on Twitter and Instagram at IVM Podcast. And if you wish to connect with me, I am at AudioGyan Moments on Instagram. Until then, take care.
Hello! It's been a great week on the IVM Podcast Network. On This Round is on Me, Gauri is joined by Shweta Nanda. They talk about the financial independence and how it is to be a woman entrepreneur. On Anish Thing, Anish welcomes ultra-marathon runner Shivani Gharat. Shivani shares her journey of how she ran her first marathon, the mindset of a runner, and what it actually takes to run a full marathon. On Cock and Bull, Cyrus, Naveen, Akash and Shreyas talk about the Korean band BTS serving in the military and its repercussions. On Think Fast, Varun and Suchita discuss Wing Greens and their latest acquisitions and about the Indian sexual wellness market. And on Shunyavan, Sheila Datya is joined by Dinika Bhatia, CEO and founder of Nuttigrities. They talk about coming from a business family and Dinika's journey in creating healthy and guilt-free snacking. Once again, don't forget to visit our merch store on ivmpodcast.com. We have some exciting new merch out there for you. Also, do follow us on social media. We are IVM Podcasts on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. And do remember to spread the word about these shows and any other shows you might be listening to. Appreciate them, rate them, and review them wherever you are listening to them. You can also check out all our other shows on youtube.com/IVM Podcasts. And finally, we would like to thank our sponsors this week: Volvo XC40 Recharge, Bumble, Heads Up for Tails, Kotak Privy League Program, and HDFC Mutual Fund. Thanks guys, without you this would not be possible.
Do you often find yourself surrounded by conversations about Web3, blockchain, NFTs, DAOs? What are these terms and how do they affect our future on the internet? So many questions, but don't worry, we've got answers to all your questions. Hi, I'm Eklavya Bhattacharya, and on our show Future Proofing, we try to decode the impact of these future technologies on various industries with experts and tech enthusiasts. Tune into new episodes coming out every Thursday on the IVM Podcast app and the website, or wherever you get your podcasts from.